As silence filled the air, Alejandro felt the weight of the moment. The world seemed to pause. Can two lives, entwined by fate, but separated by so much more, possibly find the way to connect? But then came a sudden crash. The grand doors of the ballroom burst open. A figure stood in the doorway, a man with a fierce scowl, anger etched across his face. His eyes darted around, pinning Alejandro and Sarah with a look that could cut glass. Gasps rippled through the crowd, murmurs bubbling up like impatient water boiling. Who was this man? "Alejandro," he shouted, his voice like thunder, echoing off the ornate walls. "You think you can hide forever? You owe me." The atmosphere shifted, a wave of tension rolling through the gathered guests. Alejandro's heart raced. He recognized the man, the debt collector, Miguel, from shadows of his past. A chill crawled up his spine. How did he find him here? Sarah felt the heat of the moment pulsate in her ears. Her instincts screamed urgency. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than her impulsive decision to walk through that door. She glanced at Alejandro, who stood frozen, shock wavering his composure. "What does he mean?" she whispered urgently, her mouth dry. "You don't understand," he replied, voice low, barely above a whisper. "This is not just about the bet." "It's not just a bet?" Miguel leaned forward, menacing in his challenge. "It's about debts and broken promises. Alejandro, you promised you'd make things right." Alejandro struggled to find words, confusion tangled with fear. The room felt like it was closing in. Sarah stepped closer to him, her heart racing. "What did you promise?" she pressed, her voice almost a plea, as the reality began to twist like a knife in his gut. Before he could answer, the crowd erupted into chaos. A woman gasped. Someone screamed. Guests hurried to the exit, stepping back as if a wild beast had entered their midst. Alejandro's pulse quickened. "Once I leave this place, I'll make sure everyone knows your secret," Miguel continued, raising a gloved hand. "The gamble won't just be a bet, Alejandro. You'll lose everything, your reputation, and her." "What secret?" Sarah's voice quivered, fear creeping in. She felt the solidity of Alejandro's presence slipping away into shadows. "Your father was part of something much darker," Miguel spat, eyes flickering with a twisted glee. "The art world you both love is built on lies. Your father's mistakes haunt you, Alejandro. And this woman, she'll be dragged down with you if you keep her close." The weight of his words hung like a lead ball in the air. Sarah's breath quickened, panic breaking her composure. The glamorous ballroom lost its sheen, replaced by uncertainty. Her heart sank at the implications, fear clawing at her mind. Trembling, Alejandro turned to Sarah, panic written across his face. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Find out what?" Sarah felt the void of the unknown stretch between them, an abyss threatening to swallow any hope. And just like that, everything they thought they knew cracked and splintered. Alejandro's bravado faltered as he faced the truth of Miguel's revelation. The crowd buzzed, eyes wide with shock, wondering what would happen next. In that moment, the answer loomed large. Would their connection withstand this storm, or would the walls built on secrets ultimately shatter everything? As Sarah stood there, her heart pounding, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. The air grew thick with whispers, and she could feel the weight of the crowd's gaze pressing down on her. "What did you promise?" she asked, her voice shaking, fear creeping into her chest like cold fingers. Miguel took a step closer, his eyes darting between Alejandro and Sarah, like a predator assessing its prey. "You really don't know, do you?" he said with a mocking smile. "You think you can undo the past with a bet? Alejandro's family ties are tangled in shadows. Lies, deceit, things that will change your life forever." Alejandro turned to Sarah, desperation flashing in his eyes. "You should leave." This isn't about you, he pleaded. Isn't it? Miguel interrupted, a cruel glint in his eyes. She's already in the crossfire. My friend, you've dragged her into a game she doesn't understand. Sarah's stomach twisted at his words. She could feel the tremors of uncertainty in her bones. What does he mean, Alejandro? What don't I know? But before he could respond, the grand chandelier above them flickered, plunging the ballroom into momentary darkness. Gasps filled the air, and a murmur of confusion swept through the crowd. The lights buzzed back to life with a crackle, and that's when the true chaos erupted. A loud explosion rocked the mansion, shaking the floors beneath their feet. Cries of terror shattered the atmosphere. The rhythmic music stopped abruptly, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. People rushed for the exits, their elegant gowns and suits trailing like shooting stars disappearing from the sky. Without warning, a figure emerged from the smoke that swirled near the grand doors. A woman in a tattered dress, eyes wild with fear, her hair a tangled mess. "Help! They're coming!" she shrieked, panic lacing her voice. Alejandro's heart raced as he recognized her. It was Clara, an old acquaintance whose family had been swallowed by Alejandro's past dealings. How could she be here? The worry skittered across his face as he exchanged a terrified glance with Sarah. And then, Clara was standing before them, breathless and frantic. "You didn't think it was over, did you? The debts, they never really die. They come back, Alejandro. They always do." Alejandro's breath caught in his throat. With trembling hands, Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled photo. She thrust it toward Alejandro, her eyes wide with urgency. "They're coming for you, for both of you. They want what belongs to your father." "What? What belongs to him?" Alejandro stammered, feeling time stretch like a rubber band, ready to snap. Clara opened the photo, revealing a faded image of a hidden painting, a masterpiece that had been thought lost. "This," she gasped, "your father's last secret. People will kill for it. You have to get it before they find out you have Sarah, before it's too late." And just then, a loud crash echoed from behind them. The crowd erupted into chaos once again, but all Alejandro could focus on was Sarah's wide-eyed stare, filled with confusion and fear. He turned back to Clara, urgency bubbling inside him. "Clara, tell me the truth. What does this mean for Sarah? What do I have to do?" Panic tightened his chest as the stakes rose impossibly high. "Someone close to you has already betrayed you, Alejandro," Clara said, tears glistening in her eyes. "If you don't act fast, you'll lose, not just the painting, but everyone you care about." The world turned upside down as the revelation crashed over him like icy water. Betrayal? Could it be true? He turned to Sarah, struggling to keep the panic off his face. But before he could speak, a fierce blast echoed again, louder this time, shaking the very foundation of the mansion. The lights flickered ominously before plunging into darkness once more. Voices screamed, dread engulfing the room. "What now?" Sarah whispered, clutching his arm, her pulse racing alongside his own. "Run!" Alejandro shouted, pulling her toward the nearest exit. But as they moved, a figure loomed in the shadows. "Stay right where you are," a deep voice commanded, echoing through the chaos. "We're not finished yet." And as Alejandro's heart thundered in fear, a chilling realization washed over him. Everything he thought he knew was a lie. Every choice, every moment, had led them to this uncertain fate. Could he protect Sarah? Would they survive the storm that had only just begun? The question lingered heavy in the air, demanding an answer that now seemed more impossible than ever. The figure in the shadows stepped closer, the tension electric. Alejandro's heart thundered, panic clawing at his throat. Sarah tightened her grip on his arm, eyes wide with fear. "Stay right where you are," the man commanded, his voice low and threatening. Alejandro's pulse raced. He could barely think. "Who are you?" he shouted, trying to mask his fear with bravado. In the flickering lights, the man stepped fully into view. It was Miguel, but his expression was different now, lined with a mix of anger and desperation. The weight of the moment threatened to crush him. "You don't get it, do you? You've dug yourself too deep, Alejandro." "Yes, we noticed," Sarah spat, her voice laced with defiance. "What do you want?" Miguel's eyes flickered with something. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. "You're in the middle of something much bigger than yourself. It's not just about debts. They're coming for you, for both of you." Alejandro's mind raced. "Who's coming for us?" But before Miguel could answer, the world around them exploded into chaos again. A loud thud, followed by indistinct shouting, echoed through the grand mansion. People screamed, rushing for the exits in a stampede driven by primal fear. "Get out of here, now!" Miguel shouted, suddenly shifting from the menace he'd been. Alejandro's instincts kicked in. He tightened his grip on Sarah's hand. "This way!" He pulled her toward a side door, but the panic of the crowd pushed back like a tide. The walls felt like they were closing in as they stumbled toward the exit. Then they heard the crash. The main chandelier fell, shattering on the marble floor, a cascade of glass raining down like deadly confetti. Time slowed. For a brief moment, fear hung thick in the air, alive and pulsing. Alejandro shielded Sarah, wrapping his arms around her, ineffectively blocking the chaos. But suddenly, everything went quiet, as if the world had held its breath. In that stillness, Alejandro's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He whipped it out, pressing it against his ear. "What? Who is this?" A familiar voice responded, one he hadn't heard in years. "Alejandro, it's time to make a choice. You can't hide forever. You must face the truth about your father. And Sarah, she has a right to know." He froze, the weight of those words crashing down. "What do you mean?" Another crash jolted him back to reality. The walls rattled, and Miguel hurried over, eyes darting around wildly. "You have to trust me. There's more at stake than just your family's secrets." But before Alejandro could respond, Sarah pulled him closer, desperation evident in her eyes. "Alejandro, I need to know what's happening. What truth?" He opened his mouth to explain, but Miguel's hand shot up. "No, you can't tell her. It's too dangerous." Suddenly, the figure of Clara emerged from the chaos, her hair wild, eyes frantic. "They're not just after Alejandro. They want you too, Sarah. You have to listen." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, confusion mixing with fear. This was it, the moment everything twisted. Clara took a step forward, breathless. "Your mother, she's not just an artist. She's part of this world. We've all been pawns in a game you don't even know you're part of." Alejandro recoiled, the words hitting him like a tidal wave. Breath caught in his chest. He glanced at Sarah. "What does that even mean?" he croaked. The room seemed to tilt, reality bending. Sarah's face blanched as everything she thought she knew started to unravel. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Clara continued, desperation bleeding into her tone, "your mother was involved in something far darker. You are tied to Alejandro in ways you couldn't possibly imagine." As her words sank in, the room exploded back into sound and commotion. The figure in the shadows moved again, exiting the ballroom through a hidden door, guns drawn. Chaos crashed over them like waves. "Run!" Alejandro yelled again, but Sarah stood frozen, the weight of Clara's revelation crashing over her. Staring into space, eyes wide, Sarah whispered, "Everything has changed." And the moment hung heavy as the shadows closed in around them, leaving confusion and fear swirling in the air like smoke. Would they escape, or would the mysteries wrap around them, binding them tighter than the past ever could? As Sarah stood there, her heart pounding, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. The tension in the air was palpable, and the whispers from the crowd felt like daggers. "What did you promise?" she asked, her voice shaking, fear creeping into her chest like cold fingers. But before Alejandro could respond, the grand doors behind Clara burst open again. The figure was back, and this time he held a gun, dark and menacing, the barrel glinting under the chandeliers. The room fell into stunned silence, breaths held tight as this new threat loomed. "You really thought you could escape?" The man sneered, stepping forward. It was a familiar face, David, Alejandro's childhood friend turned enemy. The betrayal stung like a lash in the air. "David," Alejandro's voice faltered, his world unraveling. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing what was started," David said, each word dripping with contempt. "You think you can play at being a millionaire? You owe more than you can imagine." Sarah turned to Alejandro, confusion flooding her face. "What's going on?" Before he could answer, David leveled the gun at them both. "You're both in deep waters now. I've waited too long for this." What was happening? The weight of this moment bore down like an avalanche. Alejandro's thoughts raced, fear and betrayal tearing at him. "No, this isn't what it looks like," he shouted, moving closer to Sarah, instinctively protecting her. But the panic in Sarah's wide eyes broke through the chaos. "Alejandro, what does he mean? Who is he to you?" In that moment, Clara's voice rose above the tension. "He knows everything, Sarah. He's been feeding information to your father. Your mother, she never wanted you to be involved in any of this." That statement slammed into Sarah like a freight train. All her reality crumbled as she processed Clara's words. "What? My mother?" "Silence," David barked, rage boiling over. "You don't get to talk about her, any of you. The truth is far more twisted than you could ever imagine." Miguel stepped forward, his earlier bravado steadily dissolving. "David, think about what you're doing. This is a mistake." "Mistake?" Alejandro's heart was racing. "What truth? What have you kept from me?" His voice sliced through the tension, desperation spilling out. "You're my friend. You're supposed to help." David's smile was cold. "I was never your friend, Alejandro. You were just a stepping stone in my path. And now, you're nothing but a pawn in a game far above your head." As he spoke, Sarah felt the world tilt again. All her thoughts churned in confusion, moments from her childhood merging with Alejandro's desperate pleas. Alejandro's face twisted in realization, fear mixing with a fierce determination. "Don't you dare," he shouted, stepping between Sarah and David, an arrow of strength in the face of danger. "If you think for a second I will let you harm her," David laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You're too late. The game has been set in motion and you both are too blind to see it. It doesn't just end with you or your secrets." The name Sarah's mother dropped like a hammer, drawing lines in the air that pulsed with hidden history. Could this man linking them together also hold the key to unraveling everything? Then the ground shook beneath them, another explosion, loud and resonating. The walls trembled, and the chandelier above them swayed, casting erratic shadows that danced like fractured dreams around them. "Run," Miguel yelled, lunging for Sarah as the chaos erupted, pushing her into Alejandro's embrace. But it was too late. As they stumbled, David seized the moment, raising the gun, but before anyone could react, a deafening crash came from below, a trapdoor bursting open, releasing a torrent of smoke that rolled in like a hungry predator. "Get down," Alejandro shouted, his instincts kicking in. He grabbed Sarah and dragged her to the ground, the urgency overwhelming. And then, in the heart of the chaos, something incredible happened. The smoke swole. "Sarah," she called, her clear voice cutting through the screams. And for a single moment, everything fell into a new silence. The entire ballroom turned, shock written on every face. "Mom?" Sarah's voice cracked, the impossible crashing down like a wave. But the truth was staggering. The woman didn't just call her name. She was here, now, with an intensity that sent shivers through everyone in the room. "You need to trust me," Elena cried, panic in her eyes. "Everything you thought you knew is a lie." At that moment, Alejandro realized this chaos wasn't just about debts or betrayal. It wasn't a simple plot. It was a tangled web of destiny. What had they uncovered? And what would they have to face next? As uncertainty twisted in the air, Sarah looked from Elena to Alejandro, all breaths suspended in a fragile thread of fear and hope. What new secrets would shatter their world next? As Sarah's eyes met Elena's, everything else melted away. The panic of the crowd, the chaos around them, even the gun that David held, all faded into a blurry background. The only reality was this moment, and the shocking truth of her mother standing before her. "Mom?" Sarah's voice came out in a breathless whisper, disbelief etched on her face. A million questions swirled through her mind, but they all faded into the urgency of this moment. "You're here? But how?" "Listen to me." Elena's voice cut through, fierce and demanding. "There's no time for explanations. You need to trust me. Your life is in danger. All our lives are." Alejandro felt a rush of emotions. Fear for Sarah, anger at David, confusion about all that was unraveling. The room spun as Elena stepped closer, her eyes locking onto Sarah's. "I've made mistakes. Chodana misu, but my love for you has never wavered. They're coming for you. They want what your father took from them." "What did my father take?" Sarah was trembling now, uncertainty flooding her. Elena reached out. "It's not just a painting. It's so much more. It's a symbol, a mark of power." Suddenly, David let out a twisted laugh, eyes glinting with madness. "Power? You think you can just walk in and take what isn't yours? You're all tangled in lies, and I'm the one who'll watch it all burn." Before Alejandro could retort, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. "Get down," he shouted as the lights flickered again, and everyone instinctively ducked. The chandelier above swayed like a pendulum, threatening to fall, but it wasn't the chandelier that tipped the balance. Then, from amidst the shadows and smoke, footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate. A figure emerged, tall and foreboding, wearing a dark suit and a smirk. "What a lovely reunion," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Alejandro, you thought you could escape me? Who are you?" Alejandro's voice turned icy, recognition creeping in. "It's been a while, hasn't it, Fernando?" The man stepped closer, and the gasps of the crowd filled the air. "I'm here for the painting, and you both." Sarah's heart raced. "What painting? What do you know?" The man chuckled, tension crackling around them. So innocent, yet so entangled. "You see, Sarah, your mother's not the only one with secrets. Alejandro's family also owes debts to people you can't even begin to fathom." A chilling silence enveloped the room. "What do you mean?" Alejandro's voice trembled, the reality of their situation sinking in. "Let's just say," Fernando said with an eerie grin, "the past has a funny way of catching up to you. Your father's misdeeds, they've come to collect." Then, everything erupted. In a flash, David turned, his anger boiling over. "You don't get to do this, Fernando. You're just a puppet like them." He shifted his gun toward Fernando. "No, David, don't!" Alejandro yelled, but the words tumbled too late. A shot rang out, sharp and jarring. Time froze as Sarah's heart stopped. David fell to the ground, eyes wide, surprise etched on his face. The crowd gasped, chaos exploding all around them. But as David crumpled, he whispered one last name: Elena. In that instant, realization crashed over Sarah like a tidal wave. Elena wasn't just the victim. She was intricately tied to the chaos, bound by the very secrets they were learning about. "How could you?" Alejandro turned to Elena, betrayal snapping in the air. But before she could answer, the lights flickered again and then cut out completely, plunging the ballroom into darkness. Shouts echoed, bodies scrambled, and in that swirling chaos, Sarah felt a pang of fear, a dagger of uncertainty pricking her heart. "Mom!" She screamed into the void, searching for Elena's face in the dark. But the only answer was an unsettling silence. As the noise reverberated in the dark, Sarah's mind raced. Suddenly, she remembered the photo Clara had shown, details of the painting, its menacing history. Was her mother entangled in something darker than Alejandro realized? Then, the atmosphere shifted, and her breaths quickened. The man who had shot David now stood where Elena once had been, a smirk spreading on his face. The game's just begun, and as that ominous statement hung in the air, a new truth began to unfurl. Something more profound than secrets or debts. An entanglement of destiny that could shift everything they thought they knew. Would they be able to piece together the truth before it was too late? As that ominous statement hung in the air, confusion wrapped around them like thick fog. Sarah stood frozen, heart pounding, the reality of her mother in front of her, twisting her thoughts into a chaotic storm. Elena was here, but how? "Mom!" Sarah cried out, reaching for her. But Elena stepped back, brow furrowed with urgency. "We don't have time for this. They're coming, and you two need to leave now." The crowd around them was lost in terror. Murmurs swirled like leaves caught in a gale. Alejandro could feel Sarah's trembling hand in his, and he squeezed it reassuringly. But the grip faltered as the chaos intensified. "Get down!" Miguel shouted again. The tension was electric, thick with fear. Alejandro's instincts kicked in. There was no option left but action. "We have to move." Suddenly, David's body lay motionless on the ground, the chaos swirling around him. A few guests had ventured closer, eyes wide, staring in disbelief at the scene before them. Some gasped, and others started crying, overwhelmed by the sheer horror of what had just unfolded. But Alejandro had no time to process the tragedy. They needed to escape before whatever shadow loomed over them struck again. But then the lights flickered one last time. A soft thrum of sorrow reverberated throughout the room as the emergency power kicked in, illuminating a red glow like a heartbeat in the dark. Shadows danced over the walls, making every figure seem both threatening and vulnerable. And just before Alejandro could pull Sarah to safety, Elena turned sharply. "No, wait!" She reached into her coat, pulling out a small, ornate box. It glittered, catching the dim light, drawing everyone's attention like moths to a flame. "What is that?" Sarah asked, staring wide-eyed. "What does it do?" "This," Elena uttered, voice trembling, "is the key to everything. It holds the truth behind your father's actions." She opened the box, revealing it held a delicate, shimmering amulet, a color that pulsated like living energy. "What?" Alejandro's mind raced. "Elena, is that?" "Yes," she snapped, urgency spilling over. "Your father placed it here, hoping to keep it safe, hoping it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. This is what they want." But before Alejandro could comprehend it all, the figure of Fernando stepped closer, eyes narrowed. "You think a trinket can save you? It's already too late," he taunted, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. As he spoke, the energy in the room shifted, a sudden hush enveloping them. The gathering shadows around Fernando bristled, shifting as if alive. In that heartbeat of silence, a sinister twist unfurled. "Haven't you figured it out yet, Alejandro?" Fernando's voice dropped, low and chilling. "Everything circles back to you. This was never just about debts or secrets." Fernando pointed to Elena. "Your mother isn't who you think she is. She has been playing both sides. She orchestrated this whole web of lies to keep you from knowing the truth about who you really are." "What?" Sarah gasped, confusion twisting her features. "Mom, is this true?" Elena's face was a mixture of fear and defiance. "Impossible! I did it to protect you." But at that moment, a fog descended over Alejandro's heart, doubt creeping in like ice water. "Elena, what are you hiding?" She took a breath, eyes darting. "You don't understand. It was all for your protection. Your father's legacy isn't just a scar. It's also a link to power no one should wield." And just like that, an intense eruption of noise rattled the room. Panic surged again as Fernando lunged forward, arms extended, ready to snatch the box. But Alejandro reacted, pushing Sarah behind him, heart pounding with defiance. "Let her go," Alejandro shouted, adrenaline surging as his instincts took over. In that chaotic moment, Elena reached for the amulet, tossing it towards Sarah. "Catch it, Sarah!" Time slowed. The shimmer flew through the air, a beacon of hope suddenly tinged with uncertainty. As Sarah's fingers brushed the amulet, a blinding light erupted, enveloping her entirely, and in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Sarah screamed, the light absorbing her, transforming, reshaping reality itself around them. Shadows twisted, and then, as quickly as it appeared, the blinding radiance faded, leaving remnants of echoes in the air. And there stood Sarah again, but she looked different. No longer the frightened girl, but something else. Her eyes shining with a fierce intelligence, a power that had been dormant. Alejandro's breath caught, the air thick as silence fell once more, feelings of dread mixing with something profoundly new. "Sarah?" he whispered, his heart pounding against fear and awe. What just happened? As the crowd was frozen, their eyes bouncing between Sarah and the chaos, he realized it wasn't just their lives that were threatened anymore. It was something much bigger. Now came Sarah's voice, transformed, full of something ancient, powerful. "Let's find out just who I really am." But as the tension crackled in the air, Alejandro could feel the weight of a brand new secret lurking in the shadows. The question loomed over them. What other truths would emerge from the depths? And could they handle the storm that was about to break? As the blinding light faded, everything changed. Sarah stood there, transformed. Her confidence radiated like sunbeams breaking through clouds, illuminating faces filled with shock. In that moment, Alejandro felt a thrill of awe mixed with uncertainty. "Sarah?" he whispered, heart racing. "What just happened?" She smiled, a knowing glint in her eye. "I think I finally awakened something that was locked away." But before they could digest the weight of new possibilities, chaos erupted once more. A loud crash from the back of the ballroom redirected attention. The last flickers of light sputtered and went out. Panic cascaded through the crowd, a wave of practiced elegance now reduced to frantic scrambling. Alejandro could barely make out the murmurings of shock and disbelief. Shadows thickened, obscuring figures, but one silhouette moved with swift purpose. "Stay back." The voice was firm and commanding. Elena. But just as she stepped forward, the ground trembled beneath them. It shook like an earthquake, and Sarah tightened her grip on Alejandro, fear igniting her gaze. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice laced with dread. "Elena," Alejandro shouted, desperate. His instinct was to protect, but confusion twisted in the air. "You know what's going on, don't you?" Before she could respond, the tall figure of Fernando raised his arms, attempting to regain control. "Everyone, listen." His voice sliced through the chaos. "You don't realize the power you just unleashed." "What power?" Sarah interjected, unyielding. A rush surged within her, her newfound strength bubbling to the surface. Fernando's eyes glinted, almost malevolently. "The amulet, it doesn't just protect. It connects you to everything, the truth buried in your family's past. Truths that could unravel the very fabric of what you know." Alejandro gripped Sarah's hand tighter. "What do you mean?" With a sudden crash, the exit doors burst open and a group of men in dark suits poured in, their faces obscured. Their eyes locked onto Elena and the amulet. The energy shifted again, a storm brewing in the air. "Get out," Elena shouted, clenching her fists. The crowd pressed backward, but Alejandro stood firm. he felt an electric connection to Sarah, a tether stronger than fear. "Mom, who are they?" Sarah yelled above the clamor, eyes wide with panic. But before Elena could explain, one of the figures stepped forward. It was a woman, fierce and confident, her face eerily familiar. "I'm here to settle the score," she said, voice sharp as daggers, "and I have been waiting a long time for this moment." Alejandro's heart dropped. "You? But I thought, how are you here, Paloma? Let's just say I've been keeping tabs on all of you. The amulet is mine, and you three have no idea what you're linked to." Suddenly, clarity struck like lightning. Memories surged forth, Paloma's laughter in his childhood, her warnings about their family's legacy. His world spun. "You were part of this all along? Why didn't you tell me?" Her laughter echoed through the chaotic ballroom. "Because, Alejandro, you needed to discover the truth yourself. All of you do." But before more questions could surface, the ground jolted again. The chandelier above swung dangerously as if a storm had shaken its foundation. And in that moment of disarray, the darkness seemed to swirl, pulling everything into its depths. "No!" Alejandro shouted as everything began to fracture. Voices blended into a cacophony of screams and cries for help, the sharp sounds puncturing the veil of confusion. As the chaos grew, Alejandro turned to Sarah. "We can't let this slip away. We have to find out who we are." But before he could finish, a drawer burst from the wall behind them, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, a smaller, blood-red amulet glowed ominously. It radiated darkness, humming with energy that felt both enticing and repulsive. "What is that?" Sarah breathed, trembling. "I have no idea," Alejandro replied, confusion deepening. "But we can't let them take it." As he reached for the red amulet, Paloma laughed again, this time more sinister. "You think the truth will set you free? It will only bind you tighter. Those who wear it will unveil the deepest mysteries, but at a cost." The tension burst, echoing through those gathered. Sarah stood before Alejandro, determined but aware of the weight of what lay ahead. "Let's uncover it together," she said, speaking softly but with conviction, her spirit alight with resolve. But just as Alejandro took a step forward to grab the red amulet, everything shifted once more. The room dimmed as time felt suspended, like it was holding its breath. And as he grasped the red amulet, the ground rocked violently beneath them, like fate was deciding to rewrite their story all at once. Would the revelations held within the amulet transform their lives or shatter them forever? As Alejandro grasped the red amulet, a jolt of energy shot through him, as if electricity surged through his veins. Time stretched, and an unbearable weight pressed down on their shoulders. The world spun, shades of crimson and black whirling around them, and he felt Sarah's hand tighten in his. She seemed both ethereal and grounded, a flickering flame against the storm of chaos. But just then, a deafening crash echoed, vibrating the very walls of the ballroom. The ornate doors splintered open, flying off their hinges. A group of masked figures stormed in, casting dark silhouettes that moved with predatory grace. Gasps and shrieks filled the air as anxiety surged like wildfire. "Get back!" shouted Elena, positioning herself like a barrier between Sarah. Her eyes flashed with fierce protectiveness. In that moment, Alejandro believed she was everything a mother should be: strong, unyielding, and fiercely committed to safeguarding her child. "Mom, be careful," Sarah cried, stepping forward, her previous transformation still lingering in the air around her. But just as the tension peaked, the leading masked figure pointed at Sarah with a gloved hand. "That one, she's the key," the voice boomed, sounding oddly familiar. "It's time, Alejandro," said David, his lips curled into a smirk. "You didn't think this was over, did you?" "David," Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "You? But you were just shot." "Oh," It's much more complicated than that. David laughed. A cold, chilling sound. I needed everyone to think I was dead. Shadows can be powerful allies when the light is shining too bright. What do you mean by that? What's going on? Alejandro stammered, the pieces sliding together like a terrible puzzle in his head. Your family legacy is wrapped in secrets beyond your comprehension, David said, each word dripping with malice. And she, he pointed at Sarah, is the heart of it all. The amulet binds you to this. And just like that, every thread of truth unraveled. The crowd shifting behind them was lost in stunned silence, eyes swirling with shock. The reality of betrayal hung thick, choking in its intensity. Enough, Elena shouted, her defiant voice cutting through the tension. You will not touch my daughter. But before anyone could react, a deep rumble echoed through the room again, shaking the floors. Suddenly, the walls trembled, and a flash of light exploded from the red amulet in Sarah's hand. The blinding brilliance enveloped everyone, swallowing them whole. Alejandro felt weightless, unanchored. And then, just as quickly as it began, it stopped. The light faded, replaced by an eerie quiet. When he opened his eyes, everything shifted. They were no longer in the ballroom. They stood in a vast, crumbling chamber illuminated by an otherworldly glow. Where are we? Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Welcome, David's voice echoed around them, reverberating through the stone walls, to the true heart of your legacy, where every question leads to more secrets. Alejandro's breath caught, a wave of dread settling over him. All the truths they had certain of began to slip away, leaving only a haunting uncertainty. He glanced around, the feeling of dread prickling his skin. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman draped in dark robes. As she stepped forward, Alejandro's heart lurched. No, it couldn't be. It is, Sarah breathed, horror etching itself into her features. Welcome back, Alejandro, said the woman, her face illuminated with a wicked smile. Back to the place where it all began. Back to the realm of your family's true past. The realization hit him harder than a punch. Everything they had known was a mere illusion, a stage set by forces larger than them all. His father's secrets, Elena's past, David's betrayal. They were all just threads in a tapestry of far darker design. Why? Alejandro croaked, his voice raw. Why would you do this to us? Because the truth shall truly set you free, she replied, laughter dancing in her tone. But it might also destroy you. And in that moment, Alejandro understood everything was at stake. The love, the betrayal, the ambitions, and as the walls of the chamber seemed to close in, he felt the chill of shadows creeping closer. What was about to happen? Would they escape its hold? Or would the truth destroy them all? As the woman in dark robes stepped closer, Sarah felt a surge of fear and clarity at the same time. You're lying, she said, her voice steady even as her heart raced. You want to manipulate us. Do you think you can fight destiny? The woman responded, her tone dripping with arrogance. This amulet will reveal not just power, but the buried truths of your lineage. A deep rumble echoed again, shaking the chamber. Enough! Alejandro yelled, stepping forward. He couldn't let her sow more doubt. If it's true, we'll face it together. Sarah looked at Alejandro, then at Elena. What have you both hidden from me? Before either could answer, Paloma interjected. This connection you share is dangerous, but it's also what makes this all the more exciting. You both must decide, accept your fate or fight against an unseen force, knowing it may cost you everything. Sarah turned to Alejandro, searching his eyes for answers. What are we going to do? Elena didn't wait for him. You must trust each other over the past, she urged. The amulet has power, but it also has a price. Will you pay it? From behind them, David sneered. You think you can turn the tides? You're still in my game. But beneath his bravado, Alejandro detected fear, something almost human. Do you want the truth, David? Alejandro's voice was stronger now, drowning out the chaos around them. The truth is, we're done playing games. We're not pawns in your scheme anymore. At that, the energy shifted. The amulet pulsed in Sarah's hand, glowing brighter. "Let's end this," she declared, stepping forward and holding the amulet high. "Together, we'll uncover the truth." The chamber vibrated with energy, and as Sarah concentrated, a surge of light exploded from the amulet. It engulfed the space, piercing through shadows and fear. The masked figures shrank back, eyes wide with astonishment. Then, the light morphed and images began to swirl. Alejandro saw giggling children running through gardens, an old man painting in warmth. Moments of joy contrasting with darkness that lurked just out of sight. "Look!" Sarah shouted. "It's our past." But great tension in the air splintered as images played about the chamber, revealing the lineage tangled in a web of stories, both good and bad. Shadows of past friendships intermixed with betrayal and love. Each scene telling a part of the truth they all desperately needed. Amidst the cacophony of history, a voice rang out, silencing all. "You have the power to choose your fate." The voice echoed as the light intensified. Alejandro reached for Sarah's hand, his voice firm. "Together, we'll redefine our future." With that, the light pulsed brighter, colliding with the darkness in waves. The chamber shook violently, forcing all present to brace themselves against the raw power that erupted from them, the force of shared will and collaboration. And then, silence. The light faded, leaving them breathless in its wake. The chamber had transformed. No longer an imposing dark place, it now glimmered softly with warmth and possibility. Around them, the masked figures had vanished, reduced to whispers in the wind. David stood there, bewildered. What just happened? Sarah stepped forward. We broke free from the shadows of our past. The smile on Elena's face was bright with pride. You chose truth over fear. That's the real legacy. Alejandro looked at Sarah, seeing her for who she really was, not only the woman he loved, but someone who had the strength to face anything. Now we can build our own story, he murmured. As they shared a moment, the world around them shimmered, filled with new possibilities. But beneath it all, a question lingered. What else had they yet to uncover? What other secrets slept just beneath the surface? As they stepped outside into the light, arms intertwined, a new journey awaited, a mystery beckoning them forward. But before the scene faded, one thing was clear. The adventure was far from over. And you, my friend, don't want to miss what happens next. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss exciting new stories coming your way. Smash that like button now. It helps us so much. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know how this ends. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our journey together.